The mysterious disappearance. The human ship, the Vanguard, drifted quietly through the vast emptiness of space. It was on a routine mission, nothing out of the ordinary. Captain Sarah Adler stood at the helm, gazing out at the star-streaked blackness ahead. Her crew went about their duties, unaware of the dark events that were about to unfold. They were on a peaceful journey to deliver a high-profile diplomat to a distant star system, a mission that should have been simple and quick. But space was never as peaceful as it seemed. The first sign that something was wrong came when the sensors blinked to life, displaying strange, irregular readings. At first, they were dismissed as minor glitches, the kind that happened every now and then when traveling through uncharted space. But the readings became more frequent, more erratic. Something was out there, and it wasn't human. Captain Adler felt a chill creep down her spine as she watched the numbers change on the display. She could feel the tension building in her chest. "Lieutenant, check the sensors again." "Something isn't right," she ordered. Lieutenant Jason Turner, her most trusted officer, quickly punched a few keys on the console. His face grew pale as he stared at the screen. "Captain, there's no mistake. The readings are real. Something is out there." Before Captain Adler could respond, a sudden harsh alarm blared through the ship's communication system, causing everyone to freeze. "Alert! Enemy ship detected," the loudspeaker shouted in a mechanical voice. The words hit like a blow to the gut. Enemy ship, the last thing any of them expected. Adler's heart raced. She had been in command for years and had faced many dangers, but this felt different. The ship wasn't supposed to encounter any threats. The galaxy had been relatively peaceful for years, and their mission had been cleared for travel in the safest of sectors. Something was wrong. Something big was coming. "Shut down all non-essential systems," Captain Adler commanded. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. All hands to battle stations." The crew scrambled into action, moving quickly through the corridors, trying to follow orders in the chaos. The ship's weapon systems came online, but there was one thing they couldn't change. The enemy ship was far too close. The Vanguard had always been a powerful ship, well-armed, well-protected. Yet, in the face of this unknown threat, it felt small, fragile, and utterly exposed. The incoming vessel was massive. From the shape of the readings, it appeared to be much larger than any known ship in the galaxy. Its energy signature was strange, unlike anything they had encountered before. Alien. Ancient. "Lieutenant, can you identify the ship?" Adler asked, trying to keep calm, though her voice betrayed her worry. Turner looked grim. "I've never seen anything like it, Captain. It's huge, but there's something odd about it. It's not transmitting any identification signals. No name. No alliance. Nothing. It's as if it doesn't belong here." Just then, the comms officer, Ensign Maria Patel, looked up from her console, her face pale. "Captain, we've lost contact with the escort fleet. All channels are dead." Adler's eyes widened. "What do you mean, lost contact?" "The fleet is supposed to be with us." "They were right behind us, Captain. They should have been in range to provide backup by now. But they're gone. No signals. No transmissions." A cold sweat broke out on Adler's brow. The fleet, 10 ships sent to protect them, had disappeared without a trace. Gone. Without a single warning or sign. This wasn't a malfunction or a freak accident. It was deliberate. "Captain," Turner said, his voice tense, "we need to get out of here. Now." Adler shook her head, looking out into the dark expanse of space, where the unknown ship loomed closer. The space around them felt oppressive, like a weight pushing down on her chest. There was no way out. Running would be pointless. They had to face whatever was coming. She turned back to her crew, her face set with determination. "Prepare for combat. We're not backing down. Whatever's out there, we're going to stand our ground." As they made their final preparations, Captain Adler could feel the eyes of her crew on her, waiting for her orders. Every one of them knew what was at stake. Their mission was supposed to be a simple task, a peaceful one. But now it had turned into a nightmare. No one knew what this mysterious enemy wanted, or why they had targeted the Vanguard. Was it random? Or had humanity, in its quiet corner of the galaxy, done something to anger this unknown force? Captain Adler gripped the command chair tightly. She could feel her pulse in her throat. She had been through plenty of battles in her time, but never one like this. Whatever was coming, whatever had taken the fleet, was going to test them all in ways they couldn't even imagine. As the Vanguard's engines hummed to life, and the crew braced for the inevitable, Captain Adler couldn't help but wonder, how long had this enemy been watching them? And why had they chosen now to strike? The answers, she feared, would only come when it was too late. The crew of the Vanguard worked tirelessly, their movements quick and precise, each one knowing their role. Yet despite their preparations, the sense of dread only grew. The unknown ship was still approaching, its immense size visible on the radar, and it showed no signs of slowing down. Captain Adler stood at the command deck, trying to steady her breathing, but the weight of the situation was unbearable. She had commanded many ships, but nothing like this. She turned to her communications officer. Ensign Patel, try to send out a distress signal. Anything we can get out, get it through. Patel nodded, her fingers flying across the console as she worked to open a channel. But the silence was deafening. No matter what she tried, no response came. The galaxy, once so vast and full of potential, now felt like a trap, with the Vanguard at the center. "Captain," Turner called from his station, "we've got an incoming transmission." Adler's eyes snapped to him, and her pulse quickened. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing a dark silhouette of the alien ship. There was no sign of life aboard it, just a cold, eerie transmission. Then a voice. Not human. The words were distorted, heavy with static. But through it all, one thing was clear. "We will not allow you to escape." The message sent a chill through the crew. Whatever this was, it wasn't just an attack. It was a warning. Whoever was behind this wasn't looking for a fight. They wanted something else. And now, it seemed, they had made it clear that there was no turning back. Adler's mind raced. What did they want? Why were they targeting the Vanguard? Was it because they were carrying a diplomat, or was there something more to this? Her thoughts were interrupted when Turner shouted from his station. "Captain, they're locking onto us. We're being pulled in." The Vanguard's engines roared as the ship attempted to break free, but it was no use. The alien ship's gravitational field was overwhelming. It was pulling them in fast. The crew scrambled, some holding onto their stations, others rushing to their designated positions. "We're not going to make it out of this," Turner said, his voice grim. "No," Captain Adler replied firmly, gripping the armrests of her chair. "We're going to fight, and we're going to survive." Her words were meant to reassure, but deep down, even she didn't know if that was possible. The Vanguard was strong, but against something like this, they were all in uncharted territory. The countdown to impact was growing shorter. Outside, the stars blurred as the ship was pulled closer and closer to the alien vessel. The crew could feel the pressure mounting, as if the walls themselves were closing in on them. Each passing second felt like an eternity. "Captain," Ensign Patel's voice broke through the tension. "The enemy ship is communicating again. It's a direct transmission." "Put it through," Adler ordered, her voice tight. The screen shifted, revealing a humanoid figure, but it was unlike anything they had seen. Its face was covered by a dark, reflective visor, and its features were unnervingly perfect, almost too symmetrical. It spoke in a language that was entirely foreign, the words incomprehensible. Patil worked quickly, trying to decipher the message, but it wasn't until the alien repeated the transmission in a clear, mechanical voice that they began to understand. "Humanity is not welcome here. Your existence is an error. You have overstayed your welcome in our space. The cold, emotionless tone sent another wave of fear through the Vanguard's crew. Whoever these beings were, they weren't interested in negotiation. They weren't looking for a fight. They had already decided humanity's fate. Adler clenched her fists. "We're not going to die without a fight," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," she ordered again. But there was no way to dodge the alien ship's powerful grasp. It was too strong. They were locked in. Suddenly, a loud crashing sound echoed through the ship, followed by flashing red lights. The ship shuddered as if it were being pulled apart. The crew struggled to stay steady, holding onto whatever they could find. "Hold on," Adler shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Get to the weapons stations. We're fighting back now." The enemy ship loomed closer, its massive shape eclipsing everything. The Vanguard's weapons systems flickered on, though they weren't sure if they would even make a dent against such an enemy. As the distance closed, Adler's heart raced. They were so close now. The moment of truth was coming, and it was uncertain what would happen next. Would they survive? Would they be able to fight off the unknown invaders? Or would the Vanguard become just another casualty in this war they didn't even know had begun? Whatever happened next, Captain Adler was determined not to let her crew go down without a fight. This was no longer about completing their mission. It was about survival. The stakes had just been raised, and every decision she made from this point forward would determine whether they lived or died. The crew held their breath, eyes locked on the approaching doom, and waited for the first strike. It was a moment that would change everything. The Vanguard shuddered violently as the alien ship's pull grew stronger. The crew scrambled to maintain control, gripping whatever they could find as the ship's hull creaked under the immense pressure. Captain Adler stood firmly at the command center, her jaw clenched in determination. She refused to let fear take hold. "All hands, braced for impact," she ordered, her voice calm but firm. "This is it. We're not going down without a fight." The alien ship loomed before them, a shadow so large it seemed to swallow the stars around it. Its surface was sleek, dark, and metallic, reflecting the eerie glow of distant celestial bodies. The Vanguard's engines roared, straining against the pull, but it was no use. The gravitational field was too powerful. "Captain," shouted Ensign Patel from her station, "weapons are online, but we're too close. The target lock is barely holding. We can't fire at this distance." Adler didn't hesitate. "Do whatever you can. We need to break free now." "Yes, Captain," Paddle responded, her fingers flying over the console. The tension in the air was palpable, each second drawing them closer to an uncertain fate. The alien ship suddenly fired. A burst of light shot out from its massive hull, striking the Vanguard with an earth-shattering force. The ship's shields flared brightly, absorbing most of the impact, but the shockwave rattled through the entire vessel. Sparks flew from several consoles, and alarms screamed throughout the ship. "We've lost power to the engines," Turner yelled from the navigation station. "We can't fight back. We can't move." "Hold on," Adler shouted again, trying to steady herself as the Vanguard was jolted once more. Her mind raced. They couldn't just sit here and wait for the inevitable. There had to be a way out of this. They had to find a way to escape, to fight back. As if on cue, the alien ship released another blast, this time hitting their forward shields directly. The explosion sent a shockwave through the entire ship, knocking crew members off their feet. The lights flickered and went dark, leaving the crew in near total darkness. "Status report," Adler demanded, trying to steady her voice despite the rising panic. "Shields holding at 30%, Captain," Patel called out. "But they're weakening fast. We can't take much more of this." "Understood," Adler said. She turned to Turner. "Can we still maneuver at all?" "We're drifting, Captain," he replied, his voice tight with frustration. "At this point, we're a sitting target." Adler clenched her fists. They were trapped. The alien ship's overwhelming power had left them with no options. And worse, every second that passed brought them closer to whatever fate the aliens had in store for them. But as she stood there, thinking, a thought struck her. The alien ship had fired twice, but it hadn't fired again. Why? Why weren't they finishing the job? Patel, she said, turning to her communications officer, send a direct signal to the alien vessel. I want to try to make contact. What should I say, Captain? Patel asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Tell them we are willing to negotiate. Adler said, her mind working rapidly. Tell them we can work together. There must be some misunderstanding. But whatever it takes, we need to stall. We need time. Patel nodded, quickly typing out the message. A direct transmission is going out now, Captain. The seconds dragged on as they waited, the Vanguard now locked in place, helpless and vulnerable. Adler watched the view screen, her eyes locked on the massive alien ship. Its dark surface seemed almost alive, pulsating with a sinister energy. The crew held their breath. Every person on the ship understood the gravity of the situation. If the aliens didn't respond, they were finished. It was as simple as that. Then, just as Adler was about to give another order, the screen flickered, and the alien ship's visage appeared once more. The figure from before, the strange, humanoid being, was now clearer, its face still obscured by a reflective visor. It was unsettling in its perfection, its voice devoid of any emotion. Humanity, the voice echoed, you are weak. You are an infestation. But your persistence intrigues us. You dare to speak of negotiation. There is no negotiation. Your kind will be erased. The crew felt the weight of those words. The cold, unfeeling nature of the alien's tone sent a chill down their spines. Adler's heart sank, but she refused to give in. Why? Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice steady despite the rising fear inside her. The alien paused for a moment, as if considering her question. Then it spoke again, each word laced with menace. You are a threat to the order of the galaxy. Your species has advanced too far, too fast. You are not welcome here. With that, the transmission abruptly ended. The alien ship didn't wait for a response. It didn't need to. The threat was clear. Adler stood motionless, her mind racing. Turner, she said quietly, her voice hard. Prepare the crew for what's coming. This is no longer about talking. It's about surviving. The enemy ship had made its intentions clear. They weren't interested in communication. They wanted humanity gone. And now, the Vanguard's crew was going to have to find a way to survive against an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced. As the alien ship drew closer, the crew braced for the worst, knowing full well that this battle might be their last. But one thing was certain. They weren't going down without a fight. The stage was set for the inevitable clash, and there was no turning back. The alien ship's immense shadow loomed over the Vanguard, casting a dark pall across the starry expanse. The crew felt the weight of its presence, an overwhelming pressure that seemed to crush them from all sides. Captain Adler paced in the command center, her mind working at a furious pace. There had to be a way to turn the tide, to overcome the insurmountable odds they faced. They couldn't just sit and wait to be destroyed. Captain, shields are down to 10%, Paddle reported, her voice tense as she worked at the communication console. We're not going to last much longer under this kind of attack. Adler clenched her fists, her eyes scanning the view screen. The alien ship was preparing for another strike. The huge guns on its hull glowed ominously, charging with deadly energy. Each shot had been devastating, and they could barely withstand another. Turner, how long until we're in range to fire? Adler asked, her voice steady despite the panic that bubbled just beneath the surface. Turner, the ship's veteran pilot, looked over his shoulder at the captain. His face was grim. We're not going to get close enough to make a difference. They're too powerful. We're dead in the water. Adler didn't show her frustration. She had been trained for moments like this, when everything seemed lost. "We don't have the luxury of giving up," she said firmly. "We'll make do with what we have." Patel's fingers flew over her console as she tried to reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields. But it was clear they were reaching their limits. The Vanguard wasn't designed to withstand this kind of assault. The shields flickered, sparking intermittently, like a dying flame struggling to stay alight. "Captain," Turner said again, his voice tight with urgency. "We can't fight this. We need to think about evacuation." Evacuation. Adler's voice grew sharper, a touch of disbelief creeping in. "We don't have that option. Not unless you want to hand them the ship without a fight." "We're running out of time," Turner insisted, his hands tightening around the control stick. "The ship is failing, Captain. We're going to get everyone killed if we don't." Adler cut him off, her eyes flashing with determination. "We fight. We find a way. Now get us out of this, Turner. That's an order." The tension in the room was palpable as the crew scrambled to hold the Vanguard together. The alien ship hovered above them, ready to strike again. Every time its guns fired, it felt like a hammer blow against the fragile defenses of their ship. Suddenly, Patel's voice rang out. "Captain, I got something. A possible weakness in their energy field." Adler's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, Patel?" Patel's eyes were wide as she worked quickly, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I've been analyzing their energy signature, and there's a disruption in their shield system. It's fluctuating, just a small opening. If we can target it with the remaining weapons, we might be able to do some damage." Adler didn't hesitate. "Do it. Fire everything we've got." The crew worked together in a desperate frenzy. The Vanguard's remaining weapons powered up, the energy humming in the stillness of the command center. Outside, the alien ship's guns powered up once more, preparing to fire. "Ready, Captain," Turner called, his fingers hovering over the controls. "Fire," Adler commanded. The Vanguard unleashed its final barrage, the last of its weapons hurling towards the alien ship. The shot hit the exact point Patel had identified. For a moment, there was silence, followed by a violent explosion on the alien ship's surface. The blast sent a ripple of energy through the ship, the vibrations felt even within the Vanguard. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the explosion began to fade. The alien ship's shields regenerated almost instantly, making it appear as though their attack had done nothing. The crew's spirits sank as the realization set in. "They've repaired the damage," Patel cried. "The shields are back at full power." Adler felt the weight of the situation settle over her like a heavy cloak. There was no room for error now. She was running out of options, and the alien ship would soon finish what it had started. But in that moment of desperation, Adler's mind clicked into place. It wasn't the Vanguard's weapons that would save them. It was the enemy's overconfidence. The aliens had assumed humanity was weak. They thought they could destroy them without a second thought. That would be their mistake. "Turner, take us in closer," Adler ordered, her voice calm and steady despite the chaos around her. "We're going to get in close enough to board them. It's the only way." The entire crew turned to her in disbelief. "Board them," Patel repeated. "Captain, we're barely holding on. You can't seriously be suggesting we have no choice," Adler interrupted. "If we don't take the fight to them, we'll die here. But if we board them, we'll show them why no one should underestimate humanity." The crew fell silent. For a moment, there was nothing but the distant hum of the dying ship and the approaching alien vessel. But Adler knew what she was asking. It was a long shot. The odds were stacked against them. But humanity had always been a species that thrived against impossible odds, and she had no intention of letting that reputation go to waste. "Turner," Adler said, her voice resolute, "set a course. We're going to make them regret ever underestimating us." The pilot nodded, his face steely with determination. "Aye, Captain." Setting course. The Vanguard lurched as it began its final push toward the alien ship, the last chance humanity had at surviving this overwhelming threat. The Vanguard trembled as it accelerated toward the alien ship, its hull straining under the immense pressure. The crew braced themselves, their bodies tense, hearts racing. Every moment brought them closer to a deadly confrontation. Outside, the alien ship loomed like a massive beast, its sleek, intimidating shape blocking out the stars. The silence in the command center was deafening, only broken by the occasional whir of systems struggling to maintain power. Captain Adler stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the screen ahead. She knew this was it. This was the gamble. There was no turning back now. The Vanguard was barely holding together. Its systems were damaged, its crew exhausted, but it was humanity's only hope. If they didn't succeed in boarding the alien ship, they would be annihilated. Prepare for impact. Adler's voice was steady, yet the weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. When we breach their ship, I want everyone ready. No hesitation. We fight or we die. There was a brief pause as her words sank in. The crew exchanged looks, knowing that this wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a statement. Humanity would no longer cower before these alien invaders. They would show the galaxy the strength of human resolve. Turner's voice cut through the tension. We're approaching their hull, Captain. Getting closer. They're not firing. I think they're waiting for us to make the first move. Adler nodded. Don't give them that satisfaction. Full speed ahead. The Vanguard closed the gap rapidly. As they neared the alien ship, the massive hull began to fill the view screen, its surface rippling with strange energy patterns. The aliens clearly hadn't anticipated this kind of boldness from the humans. They had underestimated them, just as they had with every other race they encountered. But humans weren't like the other species in the galaxy. They had fought for every inch of their survival and would never surrender without a fight. Boarding team, prepare to deploy, Adler ordered, her voice now filled with fire. We're going in. A series of muffled commands echoed from the crew as the inner doors to the ship's boarding pods opened. With swift precision, armed personnel moved into position, their faces set in grim determination. Each soldier was equipped with the latest gear, ready for whatever awaited them inside the alien vessel. This was no longer just a fight for their lives. It was a mission to reclaim humanity's place in the galaxy. Captain, we're in position, Paddle reported, her voice trembling slightly with anticipation. We've locked onto a docking port on the alien ship's exterior. It's the only place we can breach without triggering their internal alarms. Good. Open the breach, Adler commanded. With a hiss of pressure, the boarding pod shot forward, locking into place against the alien ship's hull. The crew braced themselves as the docking seal activated, followed by the violent thrum of the Vanguard's final assault. There was a sudden lurch as the pod connected with the alien ship. The sound of metal grinding against metal echoed through the ship's halls. Reaching now, said the lead officer of the boarding team, his hand on the release mechanism. The pod's outer door slid open with a deep mechanical groan. A deafening silence followed. For a moment, it seemed as if the entire universe was holding its breath. Then, the sound of boots on metal filled the air as the boarding team stormed forward, weapons raised and ready. The alien ship's interior was a stark contrast to the Vanguard, sleek, cold, and dark. The walls pulsed with strange energy, and the air was thick with the smell of alien technology. The team moved swiftly, clearing each corridor with military precision. But the deeper they went into the alien vessel, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. There was a sense that they were being watched, that unseen eyes were observing their every move. Captain, we've encountered resistance, reported the lead officer through the comms. We're engaged in firefight. Alien soldiers are everywhere. Hold the line, Adler ordered. Make your way to the central control room. We need to disable their command center. Understood, came the reply, followed by the crackle of gunfire in the distance. The crew of the Vanguard fought with everything they had. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, They pressed on, driven by sheer willpower and the knowledge that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. They knew they couldn't afford to lose. They couldn't afford to let the aliens win. As the boarding team advanced, they began to make their way toward the heart of the alien ship, where the command center lay. Every step brought them closer to their goal, but it also brought them deeper into the aliens' lair. The corridors seemed to stretch on endlessly, with strange symbols etched into the walls, their meaning completely unknown. The air was charged with an eerie hum, as though the ship itself was alive, watching them. "Captain, we're almost there," came the voice of the lead officer once again. "We can see the entrance to the command center. It's heavily guarded." Adler's voice rang out with calm authority. "You know what to do. Get in there and disable their systems. We end this now." With one final push, the boarding team reached the control room. They fought their way past the alien guards, their weapons blazing with deadly precision. Finally, they breached the inner sanctum. The room was filled with complex technology, alien devices that hummed and whirred with life. But the team didn't hesitate. They moved quickly to disable the central systems, ensuring that the aliens would lose control of their ship. In that moment, the Vanguard's last chance at survival became reality. The tide was shifting. Humanity had struck back, and the aliens, for the first time, felt the sting of a power they had long underestimated. The air inside the alien ship grew colder, the tension palpable as the Vanguard's boarding team pushed forward. The command center was now in their hands, but the fight was far from over. With every passing second, the alien resistance seemed to grow fiercer, their soldiers swarming the corridors like a relentless tide. "Captain, we've taken control of the central systems," the lead officer reported, but there was a catch in his voice. "But we're not alone here. They've triggered the ship's self-destruct sequence. We have less than 10 minutes before this ship goes up in flames." Adler's heart skipped a beat. The cold efficiency of the alien strategy was clear. They knew they were losing, and they were determined to take everything with them. The crew of the Vanguard had to act fast, or they would be the ones engulfed in a fiery death. "Can you shut it down?" Adler asked, her voice tight with urgency. The officer hesitated for a moment, then answered, "We're working on it, but their technology is unlike anything we've encountered before. It's sophisticated." The walls of the command center pulsed as the countdown continued. Each second felt like an eternity. Outside, the Vanguard hovered precariously close, its own systems strained from the battle. But the crew knew they couldn't leave. They had come this far. If they abandoned the mission now, it would be a victory for the aliens, and humanity couldn't afford that. Adler paced back and forth, her mind racing. What had started as a daring raid for survival was quickly turning into a race against time. The alien ship was on the brink of self-destruction, and their only chance of escape lay in stopping the countdown. But it wasn't just the bomb they had to worry about. The aliens, realizing that they were losing their control over the ship, were desperately fighting back with everything they had. "Enemy reinforcements incoming." A voice crackled through the comms. "We can't hold them much longer." The sound of laser fire filled the air as the crew desperately defended the command center. The once sleek and efficient alien ship now felt like a war zone, with every corner hiding a new threat. The humans were outnumbered, but they refused to back down. They had been pushed to the brink before, and they had always found a way to survive. "Keep fighting," Adler shouted over the noise. "We can't let them win." She turned back to the officer working frantically at the console. His hands flew across the alien controls, his brow furrowed in concentration. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the countdown ticked closer to 0. 10 seconds remaining, he yelled, panic creeping into his voice. Adler's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the final moment. They had pushed so hard to get here, and now it all came down to this last effort. She couldn't let it end in failure. Not when humanity had already sacrificed so much. "Do it," Adler commanded, her voice filled with resolve. With a final, desperate push, the officer slammed his hand down on the console. A series of lights flickered on the control panel, and for a brief moment, the countdown paused. The room held its breath as the seconds stretched out. Then, with a low hum, the self-destruct sequence began to unravel. The lights in the command center flickered and buzzed as the alien systems slowly deactivated. The countdown stopped. "Status?" Adler asked, her voice barely a whisper. The officer slumped back in his seat, a look of disbelief on his face. "We did it. The self-destruct sequence is disabled. The ship is safe. For now." A wave of relief washed over the crew, but Adler knew this wasn't over. The aliens would regroup, and they would fight to the last breath to reclaim their ship. The Vanguard had bought them time, but time was something they didn't have much of. "We need to leave now," Adler said urgently. "The longer we stay, the more vulnerable we are." As the team made their way back toward the boarding pods, the alien ship groaned under the strain of battle. Sparks flew from the walls, and the hum of alien machinery seemed to grow louder as the ship fought against the inevitable. "We're not out of the woods yet," said Puddle, her voice tense, as she moved swiftly through the corridors. "We've stopped the self-destruct, but their ship is falling apart." "Then we get out before it takes us with it," Adler said firmly. The crew hurried back to the docking port, their hearts pounding as they moved through the crumbling ship. Behind them, the sound of alien soldiers charging echoed through the halls. The battle wasn't over yet, and the Vanguard's crew was determined to make it out alive. With each step, they drew closer to their goal: escape. Finally, they reached the boarding pod, and with one last push, they entered. The pod's doors slammed shut, sealing them off from the chaos of the alien ship. As the pod detached and drifted back toward the Vanguard, the crew could see the alien ship in the distance, its once pristine hull now scarred from battle, its systems failing. But they had survived. As the pod made its way back to the Vanguard, Adler allowed herself a moment of relief, but there was no time to celebrate. They had done what no one had ever thought possible, but the galaxy was still a dangerous place, and the aliens, though beaten, would remember this day. They would remember the humans who defied them and the crew that had shown them the true strength of humanity. "All systems are go." Patel's voice came through the comms, breaking the silence. "We're clear to leave." "Good," Adler said, her eyes scanning the stars ahead. "Now, let's get out of here." As the Vanguard pulled away from the alien ship, the crew looked back one last time. The alien ship was fading into the distance, a reminder of the battle they had fought. They had won, but the war was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only just begun to prove that they would no longer be the ones to fear. The Vanguard soared through space, its engines humming steadily as it put distance between itself and the collapsing alien ship. The crew was still reeling from the harrowing experience. They had faced certain death and come out victorious. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The universe was vast, and in the corners of space, there were many who had watched their victory. Adler sat in the command chair, her mind still processing the battle. They had defied the odds. No one had expected them to survive the alien attack, much less disable a self-destruct sequence that no one had even known existed. The alien ship was left behind, a burning, twisted wreck in the distance, but the crew had no illusions about what was coming next. "They'll send more," Paddle said, walking up behind Adler. "The aliens won't just let this go. We've made an enemy today." Adler nodded, her gaze fixed on the starry expanse ahead. The silence in the command room was almost oppressive, filled with the weight of what they had just accomplished, and the knowledge that it had made them a target. They had not just fought back. They had struck at the heart of the enemy's pride. "Do you think they'll come after us directly?" Adler asked. Patel paused for a moment, considering. "They'll come after us indirectly first, hit our supply lines, cut us off from reinforcements. It'll be a game of attrition. But when that doesn't work, They'll send their fleets. Adler clenched her fists. She had expected retaliation, but now the full scope of what was at stake began to sink in. They had taken out a critical target, one that had held vast technological secrets, and no doubt was a symbol of power to the alien empire. Humanity had exposed a weakness, and now they would pay for it. I won't let them break us, Adler said firmly, her voice cold with determination. This is just the beginning. The crew had rallied against a common enemy, and now they would have to prepare for a new kind of war. The aliens were no longer the invincible force they had once believed themselves to be. Humans had shown them that. But it wasn't just the aliens who needed to be wary. It was every power in the galaxy that would now consider humanity a force to be reckoned with. Back in the crew quarters, the mood was somber but determined. Everyone knew what they had just been through, and what was still to come. The Vanguard's crew had survived the impossible, but now they were faced with the unknown. The silence between them was filled with unsaid words, the realization that there was no going back. They had crossed a line, and there was no turning back from the path they had chosen. As the crew members drifted off to their posts or took a few moments of rest, Adler lingered in the command center, her mind whirling. The stars beyond the viewport stretched out, endless and infinite, a reminder of the vastness of the universe. They had taken a stand. They had survived. And now, it was up to humanity to decide how far they would go to protect what was theirs. We need to prepare for what's coming, Adler said softly to Paddle, who had returned to her side. We'll be ready, Paddle replied, her voice steady. But we're not alone in this. Others will follow. Adler turned to face her, a glimmer of resolve in her eyes. They better be ready. The galaxy isn't the same anymore. We've made sure of that. With the battle behind them, the Vanguard and its crew had proven something to the galaxy. A simple truth that had been forgotten for too long. Humanity was not weak, not by any measure. They had faced insurmountable odds, and they had emerged victorious. Now, humanity would stand tall, ready to defend its place in the stars. The Vanguard began its long journey back to Earth, but the crew knew they would not have the luxury of peace for long. They would face more challenges, more enemies, but they would do so as a united force. Together, they had taken their first step toward showing the galaxy just how powerful they could be. As the ship hurtled through space, Adler looked out at the infinite expanse. The stars glittered like distant promises, waiting to be claimed. Humanity was no longer the prey. They were the hunters, and the universe would have to reckon with them. But the question remained, who would be the next to challenge them? And when they came, would the galaxy be ready for what humanity had become? The answers were out there, waiting, and as the Vanguard sailed on through the darkness, the crew steeled themselves for whatever lay ahead. For humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. No fleet, no enemy, no power in the galaxy could ever break them.